name is?
Colin.
Yours?
Morris. Barry.
Robin.
Vince.
Bee Gees' First was released on the 14th of July 1967. It was the group's debut album for the UK Polydor label and for the US Atco label. Recording sessions began on the 7th of March, not long after the Gibb brothers moved to England. Barry Morris and Robin Gibb were born in Manchester and lived there until the late 50s, when the family decided to move to Australia. While in Australia, they recorded 2 albums and 12 singles. The Bee Gees, their parents, and producer Ossie Byrne all set sail for England on January 3, 1967, reaching Southampton on February 6. The boys performed on board in exchange for passage. Before their departure from Australia to England, their father Hugh Gibb sent demos to Brian Epstein, who managed the Beatles and directed NEMS, a British music store. Epstein passed the demo tapes to Robert Stigwood, who had recently joined NEMS. After an audition with Stigwood in February 1967, the Bee Gees signed a 5-year contract. Work quickly began on the group's first international album, and Stigwood launched a promotional campaign to coincide with its release. Stigwood proclaimed that they were the most significant new musical talent of 1967, thus initiating the comparison of the Bee Gees to the Beatles. Before recording the first album, the group expanded to include Colin Peterson and Vince Melouney, who were both Australians as well. The single New York Mining Disaster 1941 was issued to radio stations with a blank white label listing only the song title. Some DJs immediately assumed this was a new single by the Beatles and started playing the song in heavy rotation. This helped the song climb into the top 20 in both the UK and the US. Another single was issued before the release of their first LP. To Love Somebody was a soulful ballad written by Barry and Robin Gibb. They wrote the song for Otis Redding. In an interview years ago, Robin Gibb said, "Otis Redding came to see my brother Barry at the Plaza in New York City one night. Otis said he loved our material and asked if Barry would write him a song. Sadly, Otis Redding died just a few days after that and he never got the chance to record the song." Finally, the full-length album was released on the 14th of July. The album was recorded at IBC Studios, where most of the band's recordings for the next 5 years took place. Robert Stigwood had booked his artists into IBC for years. Cream, The Who, The Small Faces and Jimi Hendrix were among other well-known names who recorded there. The studio had a 4-track recording facility, which was the standard in Britain at the time. The technology allowed for more than 4 tracks by a process of mixing the first 4 tracks to 1 or 2 tracks on a second tape, leaving tracks open on that second tape for more instrumental and vocal recording. The Bee Gees could have puffed up their first English album by re-recording selected songs from Australia, but they moved forward with all new songs. The cover was designed by Klaus Voormann, who had previously done the cover for Revolver by the Beatles. The Beatles originally met Voormann in their early days playing clubs in Hamburg. In the mid-60s, Voormann moved to London and joined Manfred Mann as their bass player. Upon release, the album was inevitably compared to the Beatles. A reviewer from Disc and Music Echo magazine wrote, "We whispered when we first heard Mining Disaster that Beatles' influence must be upon that record. But here comes the Bee Gees' first British album and any difference between the two becomes almost indefinable. But anything remotely resembling the Beatles' quality is worth hearing. Many of the arrangements seem to have close connection with the ideas on Tomorrow Never Knows from the Revolver catalogue. This is so like the Beatles it has to be an excellent album." At the time, there were rumors that the Beatles had sung on a couple of songs from the LP.
One persisting rumor contends that the Beatles sing on the album track In My Own Time.
Well, the only thing I can say to that is I'm very honored to let anybody think that it sounds like that because, well, the Beatles are the Beatles, but I can quite assure everybody it's not the Beatles singing on our album.
Another falsity relates that the Beatles are on the track Every Christian Lion-Hearted Man Will Show You.
So I've never even met the Beatles. I'd know them, but I've never met them, never spoken to any of them.
About the recording process, Barry Gibb said, "We drive the producer and technicians mad. We have nothing knocked out. We sit about and think up a subject, then write a song on the spot. We did the whole of the LP like this. It's really the only way we can work, spontaneously and off the cuff." The record was produced by Ossie Byrne and engineered by Damon Leon Shaw and John Pantry. Shaw explained, Ozzy had a knack of keeping quiet and letting people get on, and then he went adrift a bit and got some bands that weren't quite so good. I had a lot of time for Ozzy, he was a nice chap. He didn't have much talent as a producer, I have to say, but he had enough talent to see the band. He had this talent of keeping people together and making them productive. Shaw's colleague John Pantry agreed with Shaw's assessment. He said, Ozzy was a nice guy. He didn't know a great deal technically and initially relied heavily on the engineers. It wasn't long before the Bee Gees knew as much as him and started doing sessions without him. He did a great trick with his glass eye, which he could pop out. Bill Shepherd came on board as musical director and arranger as the album was being recorded, courtesy of drummer Colin Peterson, with whom he was sharing a flat. Bill Shepherd became the group's musical advisor, and his arrangements for strings, horns and woodwinds became an integral part of the recordings. Phil Denny also contributed to orchestral arrangements on 4 songs from the album. On the first day of the studio sessions, the Bee Gees recorded 4 songs, recording their own instrumental parts and vocals. The orchestra and some other parts were added the next week. New York Mining Disaster 1941 was done first, and it may have already been nominated as the first single on the strength of the Polydor demo. A third day, and 3 more songs started. Various takes of 1 Minute Woman had lead vocals by Barry, or by Robin, or by both. Starting a new week, on March 13th, the Bee Gees' first remixed and overdubbed 3 songs started on March 7th. New York Mining Disaster 1941, I Can't See Nobody, and Red Chair Fade Away. They then moved on to 2 new ones. The rocker, I've Got to Learn, was taken no further despite choice Robin-esque lyrics, and Cucumber Castle would be continued days later. On March 15th they started a fresh recording of New York Mining Disaster 1941. Otherwise they did no new songs but remixed and overdubbed 7 songs previously recorded. These dubs included the finished lead vocals, replacing the guide vocals they recorded at the earlier sessions. Orchestral parts were then added to many of the songs done so far. 3 versions of New York Mining Disaster 1941 were arranged for orchestra, and one of them featured a very flowery Bill Shepherd arrangement. As Robin Gibb recalled it in 2006, Robert Stigwood heard an overly elaborate arrangement of the song and told him to go back and do it again more simply. In My Own Time and Please Read Me featured only the Bee Gees band without orchestral backing. The stereo mixes of these songs are practically mono, probably because most of the instrumental work was recorded to 1 track to leave room for possible orchestration. In My Own Time was relatively straightforward, with a nice lead break by Vince. Please Read Me was dosed with so many layers of vocal that Colin seemed to have added a tom-tom in the break to make up for near loss of the rhythm track. Someone in the wordless backing vocal, probably Morris, performed the first significant falsetto on a Bee Gees song. A few years later, Nina Simone recorded a marvelous cover of this song. One of the songs that was rumored to feature the Beatles on vocals was Every Christian Lion-Hearted Man Will Show You. This psychedelic-flavored song was a standout track on the album for the memorable low chanting and for Morris's uncanny expertise with the mellotron, an instrument he could not have laid hands on until a few weeks earlier. The songs Turn of the Century and Holiday were recorded a little later than the rest. They were late additions to the lineup. Bee Gees first peaked at number 7 on Billboard's Pop Albums chart and at number 8 on the UK Albums chart. These days, many people only seem to remember the Bee Gees' 70s disco hits, and their 60s albums are a bit overlooked. But the Bee Gees' First is one of the great albums of that incredible year for music that was 1967. It's a psychedelic pop masterpiece full of brilliant songs, arrangements and beautiful voices and harmonies. It should proudly stand alongside some of the classic albums from that era.